Welcome. You are watching the How to Be a More Aware Person series. I am so excited to be bringing this series back to life. In the very first video of this series, I am discussing unsolicited advice. What is it? How do you know if you're someone who gives unsolicited advice? And how do you respond when you are receiving it? So if you'd like to watch that, head on over to that video. In this video, I'm really, again, excited because we are going to be becoming more aware about emotional triggers. This is something that I feel has been coming up a lot in the recent years, especially this year, and we can definitely all be more aware about it, learn more about what exactly emotional triggers are, how to respond to them, how to do the work, and how to really approach them in a healthy way and start to making those necessary shifts to heal those emotional triggers. Before we jump in, if you are new here, I am so grateful you're here. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment this video, and share this video with friends, family, loved ones that you feel may benefit from it. And if you are returning, I'm so grateful you are here as well. Make sure that you are subscribed too. All right, let's jump into it. First things first, what is an emotional trigger? An emotional trigger is when an experience brings you back to the past and triggers or arises old behaviors or feelings that you have had sitting in your unconscious or conscious for a long time, right? Because emotional triggers are developed over time. They don't just show up out of nowhere. These emotional triggers have been a part of your response system for probably years, right? Because these emotional triggers were developed from a past experience. So when an experience in the present moment happens and it emotionally triggers you, that is why it brings you back to that past moment where that trigger first developed. So that's why I am saying that an emotional trigger is an experience that brings you back to the past, that past moment where the trigger first developed, and it triggers those old feelings, those old behavioral patterns that you developed during that first experience. It brings that all back up in that present moment, right? So we have the tendency to be carrying these emotional triggers with us over time. We're bringing these emotional responses from past experiences into present experiences, from old experiences to new experiences. And the reason why that can be harmful is because those old responses that you had, those past emotional triggers that you developed in those earlier initial experiences may and probably are not any longer relevant, right? They are now irrelevant to these present experiences that you're having now, and they're not serving you. And they can be detrimental to your relationships. They can be detrimental to opportunities. They can be detrimental to yourself, right? When you are unaware or unconscious of your emotional triggers or the way that you respond to a certain experience that triggers you emotionally, that causes you to respond in a specific way that doesn't serve you emotionally, it can seem automatic, right? Because triggers are like habits. These are things that we've been carrying with us for years, and therefore they have become habits. They've become integrated into our behavioral system. Now, though nobody likes to become aware of these emotional triggers, because that's when you realize that it's not serving you, that perhaps you are responding in a way that, again, is irrelevant, that is harmful, that is detrimental. And it's hard work, right? It's hard work to really, really confront yourself in an emotional trigger. But when you are aware of it, when you become conscious of an emotional trigger that you have integrated in your behavioral patterns, I really want you to take a look at that as an opportunity to heal, right? Awareness is the first step to growth. When you are aware of specific emotional triggers, you have the opportunity to heal those triggers. You have the opportunity to begin monitoring those triggers, because these are triggers that are going to be coming up in your life more than once, right? The reason why it is so important to note that these emotional triggers were developed from a specific past experience or experiences in your life, perhaps when you were a child. A lot of this emotional trigger work is inner child work, okay? It's a lot of shadow work. And I will be doing other videos where we are going to be delving into inner child work and shadow work, okay? So be patient for those, but for now there's so many resources out there for you to look into that. But the reason why it is important to note that these emotional triggers are rooted from a specific experience is because you want to look, when you begin healing your emotional triggers, you want to look at this as treating the cause and not the symptom, okay? Let me say that again. When you are healing your emotional triggers, you want to treat the cause, the root of the problem, not the symptom. You want to focus on the root, because if you focus on the symptom, you might be missing out on something that is a lot deeper, okay? When you treat the root of something, when you go back and try to observe those initial moments, experiences in your life that caused you to start developing these emotional triggers, that is where you heal, okay? So you want to, again, treat the cause, not the symptom. Let's say, random example, that the symptom of your emotional trigger is that when you feel emotionally triggered by the specific experience, you have the tendency, the symptom, to go eat a lot of junk food, go eat a lot of unhealthy food, okay? This is a very random example, something very simple, just to kind of understand the concept. So when you approach it as treating the symptom and you say, I'm just going to stop eating unhealthy food and I'm going to resort to eating healthier foods when I feel emotionally triggered from this experience again, what you're doing there is just shifting the symptom, right? You're shifting your response, which is very good, but you're going to continue to get triggered because you did not treat or heal the actual root cause of that emotional trigger. Okay? So that is why it is important, yes, of course, to heal the symptom. But first, you have to get to the root cause. You have to dig a little deeper and try to see where this trigger is rooted in, where this trigger first started to develop in your life. I feel like the pivotal moment when you feel emotionally triggered is that moment between that event and your response. That space in between the event, the experience, and your response, right? That space that is in between is the space where you can begin to observe, to heal, and to shift. Okay? Because it is in between that space where you can take the time and take a step back and not feel rushed to respond, okay? Please remember, in your self-healing work, remember that you are not required to respond right away, okay? I know that we are in a society where we want that instant gratification, we want that immediate response, but you are not required to do that, especially when you are healing, especially when you are doing that self-work and observing yourself and trying to make those necessary shifts and changes and healing in your life. You're going to need that time and that patience and that space, okay? In that space between the event and your response. So after the event happened and before you respond to that event is an opportunity to respond differently. I know that earlier in the video, I brought up that your emotional trigger will cause you to respond in either a negative or positive way. But I actually want to take that back a little bit and encourage you to, instead of looking at it as good or bad, look at it as, is this response useful or not? Does this response serve me? Does this response, this habitual response to this emotional trigger, serve my higher self? Is this the way that the person that I am trying to become would respond? Okay? Put yourself in the shoes of a more healed you, of a higher self you. How would that person respond? Would they respond in the way that you typically do? Yes or no? That is how, in asking yourself these questions, that is how you identify whether or not your habitual response to that emotional trigger is useful or not. When you are doing this self-work, when you are identifying your emotional triggers and these habitual responses that have been integrated into your behavioral system over a period of years of time, at the core of this self-work, at the base of this behavioral observance, is really you just taking note of your thought patterns and feelings that heavily influence your behavior. Emotional triggers that cause behavioral responses that are now irrelevant, that are inaccurate, right? Because sometimes our emotional triggers may cause us to feel an emotion that isn't necessarily true to that event, okay? Because remember that your emotions aren't always true, okay? Your emotions are based off of your past experiences, right? So let's say when you were a child, you went to the water park and you had a horrible experience there. Every time you go to the water park, you feel afraid. Whereas another child, growing up, every time they went to the water park, it was the best day of their life. So every time they go to the water park, they feel so excited. Okay? Feelings are tied to our experiences. That's why it's so important to observe the feelings that we develop that are tied to specific experiences. That is what this emotional trigger, inner child, shadow work looks like. That's what this is all about. And on that note of that example, it is important to note that different situations will require different remedies, okay? Different people will require different remedies for their healing. So it's also a lot about taking the time to really get to know yourself and what remedies really heal you, okay? Again, I want to really repeat this because it's just so important to the healing process, is that when you are aware of your emotional triggers and your habitual responses that are tied to those triggers, that is where your opportunity is when you become aware. Even though it might be scary, even though you may not want to confront yourself, even though it's not easy to go back to the past sometimes, you know, because sometimes these emotional triggers are tied to traumatic experiences from our lives. So it's not easy, and it's again going back to getting to know yourself and knowing what healing remedies work best for you. Sometimes you need outside help, you need professional help, and there's nothing, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of about that. And I'm going to be linking and sharing some resources for those of you who may want to seek that outside help in the description below. But when you become aware, as challenging, as confronting, as scary, as saddening as it may be, you are in a powerful position to challenge your emotional trigger, to identify the root cause, to begin your healing and begin, you have that opportunity to begin responding in a different way that is more useful, that is more accurate. And this is something that's going to take time. I mean, even just looking at trying to shift other habits in your life, whether that's you wanting to wake up earlier or you wanting to make sure that you fold and put away your clothes after it gets out of the dryer. Any little habits that you've tried to shift in your life, you realize that it actually takes time to make those shifts. But this is necessary work if you're really trying to heal and you're really trying to no longer allow yourself to bring past experiences into new ones, right? Do know that it's going to take time, but the more that you work on a certain trigger, the deeper that you dig over time into your past experiences, sometimes more is actually going to come up and more is going to come up, and perhaps it might even lead you to identifying other emotional triggers, right? So Please journey with grace. Please be gentle with yourself, and please be proud of yourself if you are delving into this self-work, if you are traveling back to the past and observing yourself and doing the work. It's not easy. It's absolutely beautiful. It is an absolutely beautiful and messy and unlinear journey that is so worth it, but it is challenging, it is confrontational, okay? So please be proud of yourself and do know that it is going to take time. And in my own experience, the way that I have truly healed my emotional triggers that no longer serve me, again, it was over time, and it took multiple experiences that are similar that brought up that same emotional trigger. It took a few times. And each time I dug a little deeper. In those first times, I did not want to be confrontational to myself. And it was hard. It was hard because I didn't have the emotional or mental or even physical capacity to dig deeper. So I want you to know that it's okay if it's going to take you time. Again, I really, really want to stress that, because even for myself, still healing emotional triggers, still shifting my responses, but getting better and better. Now, I'm actually going to get a little personal here. I'm actually going to volunteer and be vulnerable for the sake of learning, for the sake of teaching and giving. I'm going to share a trigger that I actually finally got to the root of, at least part of the root, right? Because I feel like, you know, when you look at the root of a plant or a tree, it disperses and it's like a bunch of roots, right? It's not just one, and it's all connected to the same thing. So I found one of those roots, and I think it's one of the big ones. So I'm pretty proud of it. I felt like I had finally had this revelation, because this is a situation that I've been running into, I think, basically my whole life. And this year it became detrimental to one of my relationships. And it came up again for me yesterday. And I finally had a revelation as to where that emotional trigger was first developed and why. Okay, so I'm gonna share that with you. I'm gonna briefly share this with you just so you can really, really grasp. And also I'm going to let you know how I responded in that space, how I'm doing the healing personally. And this is something that I shared on my Instagram also yesterday. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, where I'm giving these real time, because for some reason I've really been like dropping gems on stories. So if you want to follow me, please do, and join my Instagram community. But okay, so a personal emotional trigger of mine, a personal experience that has come up for me is people in my life showing signs of imitation or copying me. And whether I am wrong or right, whether they are actually copying me and imitating me, it honestly doesn't really even matter in the grand scheme of things, because no one can take no one can take your purpose and your vision and your execution away from you. No one can take what's meant for you from you, right? So like in the grand scheme of things, I really shouldn't even care if someone is actually imitating or copying me. But when I have noticed that people in my life or people around me are beginning to do that, I would get really, really emotionally triggered. And my emotional trigger and response would feel like I'm in danger, right? Like my vision and my path and my opportunities and my ideas and my visions are at risk when I notice that someone is imitating, someone is copying me, or instead of saying when I notice it, when I perceive it, right? Because our perceptions aren't always true. Perhaps they are copying me and perhaps they aren't, okay? But regardless, I would get that emotional trigger. Now, what I mentioned, and sometimes people do, okay? Sometimes people do that. They do copy your ideas. They do cause detriment to your path, okay? So there is that validity. There is that validity also from your own personal experience. There is that validity for you to feel that way, for me to feel that way, for me to feel that I am at risk or I am in danger. And I will get into that. But what I shared on my Instagram yesterday is, ironically, you know, this year specifically, the universe has been bringing people that I love, people that I know care for me, love me, respect me, honor me, support me genuinely and sincerely, and vice versa. These people have been the ones triggering me. These people have been the ones to cause certain emotional triggers to come up. And the reason why I'm actually grateful that it's coming from people that I know, love, and support and genuinely respect me is because I know that they have good intentions. And that in itself shows me that these emotional triggers that are coming up are irrelevant. That these emotional triggers do not serve me. That these emotional triggers are inaccurate, okay? And like I mentioned earlier in this video, I think I mentioned it. If not, here we go. Your emotional triggers can be detrimental to your relationships, to opportunities. Yes, I did mention it. To yourself. So earlier this year, I had someone in my life who was actually, in fact, integrating parts of my life and my habits and my behavioral patterns and my investments, my pursuits. They were integrating those things into their life. I saw it vividly right in front of my own eyes. And I think because that trigger existed in me already, to have it happen to me in my immediate surrounding by someone that I love, and at the same time I was going through other things, 2020, right? It really became detrimental to our relationship. I to this day have needed space to really get to the root of this, right? And there's other things at play, but this is a part of it. And the reason why I wanted to bring that first experience up, and it has sat with me for months since then, trying to understand, why did this bother me? Why did it make me respond in this way? Why is it getting to me the way that it is? Right? It really, again, in the grand scheme of things, is not that important. It really should not affect me this much. I'm really someone, I personally am striving to be somebody where my exterior surroundings and the people around me and occurrences around me don't cause me to be uprooted, to be so disheveled, and to cause me to become uncentered. I really am striving to be someone who is truly grounded and centered. And I know I'm going to get there. I'm on the way. But so that's been sitting with me, right? Yesterday, another person that I love, that I appreciate, that I respect, that also I know loves me and respects me and honors me and genuinely supports me and is such a good friend and has good intentions, reached out to me and let me know that they're going to do a rebranding, and their rebranding, the name itself is very similar to mine. And it got to me. But this time around, now that I actually have more so of the mental capacity, the physical capacity, I'm in a safe space now to heal, to really sit with myself. The spiritual capacity to dig deeper. I sat back and I was actually in awe, right? When I received this message from my friend, I was actually like, wow, this has really been coming up for me. Like this, because other things too, and I'm not going to get into it, but other events in my life that are triggering me and causing me to really start breaking these patterns has been coming up a lot for me this year. And I know I'm actually healing because I really am doing the work. And because I've been really delving into my self-work this year, like really investing time and energy into it, is partly one of the reasons why 2020 has just been a lot. Because again, the self-work is not easy, and it's messy, and it's hard, and it's confrontational, and it's unearthing. You know, you're really unearthing a lot that is deep within your subconscious, and you're bringing it to the conscious. But I was in awe because I was like, wow, I know that this is something that I have to heal. And so when I received that message and I read it, my emotional response, my emotional trigger, initially, it's like almost like my heart did drop, and I was just like right away, right? Because your emotional trigger like happens right away after the event. So this is the event, right? My friend messages me, lets me know that their rebranding is similar to mine. Here's the space, and here's my response. I am triggered. Here's the event, I'm triggered right away. But yesterday, I really sat in this space right here that is so special, so powerful, because it is in this space where you get to decide whether you're going to respond the way that you always do and doesn't serve you and is possibly inaccurate and irrelevant and harmful, or you decide to respond differently. And you can take as much time as you want in this space. Now, because I've already been doing the work, because I have the capacity, because I'm already in this space of self-observance and inquiry, because it does take a lot of energy, and I already feel like I'm on higher vibrations, I didn't need to sit in this space as long as I have in the past. Remember that this healing is incremental work. It's like a ripple effect, right? When you skip a rock into a lake, and at first it's like a big ripple, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That is what your healing process is like. It's big and overwhelming at first, but then it gets easier and easier and easier as you really narrow it down. I sat in this space. I took a deep breath. I felt that danger, right? I felt uneasy. I felt like, oh, like another friend. Another person, like, this is like, really. And I let that come up. I allowed my emotional triggers to express whatever it wanted to express. And then I sat there and I was like, okay, I wanted to respond right away, but I was like, no, Joss, put your phone down, sit with this, chill, okay? Like, and I self-soothe myself, right? And self-soothing is like giving yourself a pep talk. It's literally like hugging yourself, and and so what I've been doing is stepping outside of myself in that moment, stepping outside of myself and looking at my inner child, because I am becoming more and more convinced that all of this healing is inner child work. It is all rooted in when we were children. So I'm stepping outside, I'm becoming an observer, right? You are not your thoughts, you are the observer of your thoughts. And I'll delve into that in another video. I step outside of myself in that moment. And I become the observer, and I'm looking at my inner child, and I'm stepping into the past as a child, because this trigger really comes up even more specifically when it's coming from another woman. And I have been healing my relationship with women for a while now, and consistently asking myself, why specifically women, right? So it's like, again, these different variables that come in. And then I had a revelation. And it honestly felt like a victory, because I was like, finally, I have some kind of lead. I have some kind of answer as to why does this bother me so much the way that it does? Why does this get to me? Why it really shouldn't dishevel me the way that it does. And again, this is the reason why I love that this is coming from people that I love, that I'm being triggered by people that I know have good intentions, because I know that they aren't trying to cause me harm. I know that they aren't coming with bad intention. So that tells me that I definitely don't need to be responding in this way of my emotional trigger of feeling like I'm in danger, or like I'm at risk of losing something, right? So I realized, my revelation was that perhaps the reason why I feel this way is because I'm finally, specifically for the past 3 or so years of my life, I'm finally really stepping into my power. I'm finally really stepping into the woman that I I've always strived to become, that I've been wanting to step into since I was a little girl. Um, and following my passions and putting myself out there and doing all the things I've always wanted to do and envisioned myself doing as a little girl. And so now that I'm in that space where I always saw myself as a younger child, and when I was a little girl, I was very insecure. I was very reserved. I was very shy, very quiet. Um, Always comparing myself to other girls, to the point where I actually wish that I could have another girl's life, another girl's body, another girl's experience. Like, that is how insecure I was. But at the same time of that insecurity, I knew that I knew who I really was, who I really am deep inside. And I remember as a child always thinking to myself, man, I can't wait for the day that I am that woman that I know that I am. The woman that leads and puts herself out there and does videos and puts teams together and models and is in front of the camera and does all these creative projects and inspires people, you know. And at the time I was just so quiet and so shy and so frustrated with myself that I wasn't already that woman. And so I realized that because I have been waiting for this moment for almost all my life, especially when I was a little girl, and at the same time I was so insecure, comparing myself to other women, feeling feeling uh what's the word, feeling almost like other girls were taking things from me. I don't know how to explain it. But given that I had that experience as a child, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm responding in this way because my inner child feels feels in danger of losing herself again. Ooh, maybe this is my inner child feeling like another woman is going to take something from her. Maybe this is a survival response. Maybe my inner child is actually just trying to protect me. Maybe my inner child doesn't know that she is safe now and she no longer needs to feel insecure. She no longer needs to feel like she's at danger or like someone can take something from her. So then when I had that revelation, and I could dig deeper into it, but to not make this video super long, that's the gist. But when I had that revelation, I was like, wow, it was just so mind-blowing. And I know that some of you may relate to this in the point of like, you know that moment where you finally get to the root and you realize that is where this possibly could be coming from, or this is coming from. I mean, I have no doubt that this is at least part of the cause of my emotional triggers that I've developed. Because you're comparing the events, right? The event, what does this involve? In my specific case, it's a woman, right? It's another woman. I'm looking at my surroundings, at myself. What am I doing right now? Oh, I'm finally the girl that I wanted to be when I was little. So the fact that those two aspects are tied to the current event and the event in the past, those are the connections that you need to make. So when I had that revelation, I began to self-soothe. I was like, in awe that I finally came to this realization, this epiphany. And then I literally hug myself and I tell my inner child, little Joss, you are safe now. You're good. Like, you don't need to worry. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to feel insecure anymore. You are in a safe space now. Like, I got you. I got you, you know? And telling myself, like, these are your friends. Like, these are your girlfriends. These are people that love you. They have good intention. And also, like, it's not that deep. You know, it's not that deep. We're all inspiring each other. We're all influencing each other. You're not at danger. No one can take anything from you. Your visions are yours, uniquely yours. No one else has it. No one has your experience. No one has your exact visions, right? No one has your execution, right? And it's like pep talking yourself, like, girl, you have nothing to worry about, you know? And like really almost even being silly and having fun with it and like shifting that energy of that event, of that moment into like, you no longer have to respond this way. And it is so much more helpful when you do have people around you, especially the people involved who are open to having these honest conversations of healing. Because I actually voiced this to my friend when I took that space, and then I had the revelation, I did the self-soothing, and then I felt ready enough to respond. And because I felt comfortable enough and safe enough to actually tell my friend the truth, I told her that I actually felt triggered and what my realization was, right? And that's where the healing happens. And I'm honestly happy. Like, I'm excited to be journaling about this more and be delving more into it and writing it down, because writing things down, sometimes when you do stream of consciousness writing, so stream of consciousness writing is when you allow yourself to just flow. You're just writing and you're not overthinking it. And one sentence leads to another and one thought leads to another, and you're just writing this stream of consciousness. And sometimes when you do that form of writing, things come up, things are earthed from your mind that you didn't necessarily know was there, nor know was going to come up. So I'm excited to be delving into this more, and I feel like I had a breakthrough. I honestly feel like this was a breakthrough moment. And so this is honestly why I wanted to do this video, because I feel like this is really going to help somebody. So I hope that you appreciate that breakdown and that specific example of something in my own life that happened just yesterday. So again, emotional triggers are experiences that bring us back to the past and unearth, uproot, arise old behaviors and feelings, right? This experience takes you back to the past, and the feelings and behaviors that you had in that past moment are the same feelings or similar feelings and behaviors that you have and are bringing to this present moment, to this present event or experience. And again, not looking at it as good or bad, but looking at it as, does this serve me or not? Not treating the symptom, but treating the cause, so that you really shift your future. And this trigger doesn't come up for you anymore. And I will say that in treating the cause, you do treat the symptom. And knowing that healing is a lifetime's process, okay? there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no timeline or deadline to this, okay? Take your time. Take your time. This is not easy work. If you have any questions, again, uh, uh, things that help are journaling, self-soothing, having honest conversations with yourself, with others, with professionals, allowing yourself to have time in that space, right? Feeling the fear, doing it anyways, challenging yourself, challenging that moment, challenging your response. It gets easier over time, and the more and more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more and more that you're like chipping down on this emotional trigger. And by the time you know it, it's just going to be a little irrelevant pebble that no longer affects your life. Okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Again, if you feel like someone will benefit from this video, share this video. And if you enjoy my content, you enjoy my work, you want to keep following this How to Be a More Aware Person series, please make sure to subscribe and support my channel. If you watched this whole video, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for sticking around. I hope that this helped you. This helped your higher self. You feel a little more clarity and understanding about emotional triggers. And I hope that I left you with some tools, with some guidance for the healing in your own life. Okay. All right. Time for a hug. Oh, yes. Yes, we got this. We got this. And we deserve the healing, okay? We deserve it. And we deserve to take our time. And we deserve to feel proud of ourselves as we do this work, all right? Okay, bye.